Chess friends, I hope you are doing well. Today, I have a very interesting and remarkable chess game that was played between Magnus Carlsen and me. This game is very spectacular because I sacrificed my knight to attack his kingside. I also played with the black pieces against him. Magnus Carlsen, as the world's #1 chess player, faces me in this epic chess game, so let's get started without wasting any time. He started the game with e4, we have c5 and knight f3, here. I didn't consider knight c6, e6, d6 or even any sidelines of the Sicilian. I decided to go with the French variation of the Sicilian. He played g3, and we have a6, deploying the Sicilian defense, where I can go with d5, bishop here and d5 on the board. All those moves are possible, so after the bishop moves out, Magnus simply castles. My knight went to f6, attacking the pawn. Here, Magnus could go with knight to c3 and I would consider going to c7. Putting pressure on the pawn where knight to g4 followed by bishop, d6, and h5 could arrive on the board, and after subsequent moves, when bishop b7 followed by bishop e7 comes, I could even consider h5. I am very determined, like Saturn, where I can put my knight on g4 to put more pressure on the h2 pawn. This will illustrate my chess ideas and show my superior intelligence over Magnus Carlsen. This chess opening could be initiated in the game, but in our actual game, Magnus didn't consider knight c3. Instead, he played e5, which is why, instead of playing knight e5, I played knight to g4, putting more pressure on the e5 pawn. We have bishop e2 and queen to c7 to add more pressure. Here, Magnus Carlsen, out of frustration, considered c4. He just wanted to develop his knight and rook simultaneously on the board. After a few moves, I even considered h5 to protect the knight. We can see that my position is just dominating Magnus Carlsen. Magnus didn't consider d3 or d4, he played queen to c3. A very strange looking move. After I considered b6, he played h3 to attack my knight. Here, I played a very amazing move, bishop to b7, gaining access to this diagonal. I sacrificed my knight, and in this position, playing d4 might seem reasonable to many chess players, but it is not a good move, as you will see. Let me show you the variation and why d4 is a very bad choice. After the exchanges, I can easily capture the pawn on e5, threatening checkmate on the h2 square. The knight cannot move back because I can pick up your bishop, and the queen cannot go to the f3 square. Therefore, many chess players might consider f4, but it is a completely bad move because after I capture it and the queen exchanges occur, followed by knight takes c3 and bishop takes c3, I will end up with 3 minor pieces against Magnus Carlsen's 2 minor pieces, which is just winning for me. So going back to the position, Magnus Carlsen didn't consider d4 as it is a completely vulnerable move, and no sidelines were possible. That's why Magnus had to capture my knight. That was the only way to protect the game. Then the knight on f3 was under attack, so the knight should not move back to h2. The problem is very clear because I can go with f5, you cannot move any pawn because queen takes h2, leading to checkmate. That's why white's position would be over because I can play rook h6 and develop the rooks to gain access to the file, entering enemy territory where the white king will be checkmated. I could even consider knight d4 to open up the sniper bishop and dominate. The game would be completely in my hands, with the position favorable for me. Going back to the position, we discovered that playing knight h2 was a very bad choice. That's why Magnus moved his knight back to the e1 square, and I played f5. Again, you cannot play en passant because queen to h2 would lead to an easy checkmate. This position is very challenging for Magnus Carlsen. He thought for a bit, and here, I would like to say, try to pause the video and figure out what white should consider in this position. Many players might think of considering knight to d3, but that is a completely vulnerable move. The point is very clear. Magnus actually played queen to e3, and after a long castle, I noticed that I could double up my rooks on the h-file. Here, you cannot play any normal move such as knight c3 or a3, you cannot even consider knight to d3. The point is that when I consider rook h6, f4 comes on the board. White's idea is to play king f2 and secure his king as soon as possible to get away from the danger zone. That's what white wants in the game. Therefore, I can double up the rooks, and when the queen goes to f2 to get the free highway, rook h2 will arrive with the idea of playing knight d4 to put pressure on the pawn. After the rook moves, rook to h3 will arrive on the board, and you can see that your queen in the center of the board will be harassed and lose all means of escape. The game will be in my hands. So, let me provide you an inspirational quote in sudden with you. Surround yourself with positive people who believe in your dreams, encourage your ideas, support your ambitions, and bring out the best in you. So going back to the position, we discovered that Magnus cannot consider knight d3 or any normal move. That's why we have f3 to attack the pawn, and I considered d6 to open up my bishop and queen diagonal. He captured the pawn, and I captured the central pawn. He further captured the pawn on f5. At this point, I just pushed my pawn to e4. Magnus' position was harrowing, going from bad to worse because his kingside became very exposed. That's why he had to consider g3, when my knight went to the d4 square. Putting pressure on the bishop and dominating the square, your dark square bishop could not capture my knight on d4 because after I captured your bishop, the queen would move back, and d3 would arrive on the board to attack the bishop. My bishop would have an open diagonal along with the rook's open file. Therefore, I could consider d3, and the position would be completely in my hands. Magnus would just lose the game very badly. So, returning to the position, Magnus just considered king to g2, and I captured the bishop. After that, we have rook to d3, attacking the pawn on g3 with my queen. At this point, you cannot capture the rook on d3 because the position will be very dangerous. I can consider e takes d3, putting pressure on both the queen and the king simultaneously. So, going back to the position, the rook cannot be captured. After rook f4, I sacrificed my rook on the g3 square. The point is that after you capture, bishop to h4 check arrives on the board. As the king moves back, I just capture the rook, threatening another check on the g3 square. At this point, Magnus Carlsen resigned the game because he had nothing left to do in his position. After the queen moves, and after the check, bishop takes knight, the king should not capture it because of rook to h1 check, which would lead to checkmate on the next move. The game would be over. So after the bishop moves and a few exchanges, we have pawn to d3, check and mate. Magnus Carlsen lost the game, and once again, I won the game like a hero. I hope you enjoyed the game very much. If so, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wishing you all the best. Bye bye, take care, see you soon.